When I am seated in a quiet place, like I am now, it seems easier to experience what is authentic and true and real about myself. And it's not defined by this physical container in which I sit, this body. It's defined by something far deeper, the non-physical, the spiritual, qualities of myself, the vibration, the attitudes. That I am a soul, a being of peace, eternal. Things that are beyond the physical. It's easy to experience this when I am seated, very still, no distraction. I come inside and dedicate the power of my mind and heart just on this one thing, the self, I, the soul. But then I ask myself, can I sustain this quality of experience, this deep inner peace, authenticity, when I'm not seated, when I'm acting and interacting day-to-day life? Can I stay connected to this deep sense of self in day-to-day life? Is my experience of the self when seated of the same quality as when walking and moving around? Have I brought spirituality to life? Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and good evening, and welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. And tonight's session is bringing spirituality to life. So, just a few thoughts that were shared during the reflection. I was thinking about two things in terms of the topic. Actually, it might be three, but this aspect of integrating, because I know we talk about how we often separate spirituality and physicality. But I was also thinking about this aspect of bringing it to life as actually being meaningful. So perhaps maybe they're connected. And then the last thing, which was connected to that too, in terms of the meaning, I was just thinking about something you had shared at a workshop. It might have been Tanya was there as well from the Center for Montreal, but a reflection. Souls were asked to close their eyes and, what does that experience feels like maybe in meditation or practicing soul consciousness, and then opening their eyes, and what's the difference between the two. And so these three aspects came to mind a lot, and I was and see if you could share just helping us enter into this topic of what inspired you in light of these three things I've been thinking about. What inspired you with this topic?
Shanti. I'm not sure if what I share will necessarily connect to what you just spoke about, because it was really just our lesson this morning that inspired this topic. One thing, and then actually hearing a spiritual extract just a few moments ago also underline this topic. And I guess the first thing is that it's important, or we could say meaningful, but important for someone to want to do this. I mean, why bring spirituality to life? Like that alone has to be felt to be a valuable endeavor to bring spirituality to life. So that's something each of us sorts out. But the idea that there is just pure spirituality, which is a realm that we say God resides in, just pure spirituality. But we reside here. You hear the saying that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We reside here. So we want to have an experience of pure spirituality, but sort out how to bring it into day-to-day life. And somehow that's connected. If we think it through, that's connected to experiencing peace and happiness here. And that might be the reason that I want to master it. So to sort of sort that all out for the self, but I know personally it really intrigues me, and I love hearing about it, which I heard twice now today. That first I need to have an experience of pure spirituality that attracts me. We say this deep experience of who I am is how we describe it, that I'm very interested in having. And then the next piece, it would be a shame to throw away the experience of who I am as soon as I come into sound and action. So how can I hold the integrity of the self as I come into sound and action? Because I think that's connected to being at peace with the self as I walk and move around. So it was really today's teachings, the disciplines and the directions that help me to hold a sense of self, pure spirituality, as I come into action and interaction.
Thank you. Well, with today's class, it did strike these three things that came to mind. That's why they had come up, and I was reminded about them as well during the commentary. And the reason why they came to mind, and specifically maybe the one in terms of eyes closed and whatnot, because it was really shared this morning that that this needs to happen here in physicality. But I guess I was thinking about the struggles that souls have in terms of, oh, I don't have time for it, or that I'm having a lovely experience when I'm sitting in meditation, and or that it feels like a lovely experience, but the moment they come into action, it's like a struggle to integrate. And I was wondering, what do you feel? Is there something that's missing in the seated time that souls may not be aware of? A blind spot?
I always find it fascinating in the fitness world that there's a very small percentage of fitness goers who are interested in very introverted, alignment focused practices. They find them enjoyable. It's not a case of I should do this, they actually find it enjoyable. It's a very small percentage. I always feel that everyone actually would find it enjoyable if they had a chance to experience it, because it feels so good. The body really enjoys being aligned. It doesn't like to feel pain, which it will if it's out of alignment. So I always feel everyone would want to experience, but there's a little bit of a wall, and that wall might be not fully understanding it, not feeling, if you will, worthy that I can do it. Ego gets in the way a lot because there's not a lot of show in these types of introverted practices. So it doesn't feel like I'm getting anywhere. The ego isn't really fed. And I always find that maps onto spirituality as well. That it's a very small percentage that actually wants to go into that, do that very invisible inner work. Everyone would enjoy it. Everyone, I think, would love the experience of their authentic self, but there's these little blockages. So to really check, am I being enslaved by these blockages from something that I would actually enjoy? I think that's what's actually getting in the way of the determination to translate these very beautiful experiences into something practical, because it will involve doing some invisible work.
So I was reflecting, listening to share, and something I've been thinking about as well. And I was inspired from a national study group call we were on the other day. But as you were saying, yes, most definitely the experience, if it's enjoyable, who wouldn't want to? And you were talking about these walls that get in the way. But I was thinking about, I know that sounds like it might be something that souls may not get, but it was just something that always stayed with me when I took a biochemistry class. And you were learning in this class about enzymes and the function of enzymes, that proteins, they need to transform in its shape to be able to perform its function. And enzymes, they actually help to reduce the inertia, so to speak, the complicated, just there's energy that's required for this protein to transform. And an enzyme, its function is it latches onto a certain part of the protein, so it actually reduces the energy that's needed to do that. And I guess I was thinking about the role of the symbol of a mother, creating bridges so that it's easier to be able to cross over. So I was thinking about that in terms of what you're sharing. If you feel that, it's not a hit and miss, but like every single time I can override, there's ego, but every single time that I can override to be able to experience what we really want to experience. And I guess I think about the first student. I have a feeling that his capacity to override, the mastery he had, but it was also not violent. And I wonder if it's this, using the example of an enzyme, but this capacity to override that we're blocked by trying to override through violence, not appealing means. It just feels so laborious. And so in a way, we're kind of careless, or maybe trying to attain what we're attaining, but it's just too much labor, and we may not even realize we're doing that.
When you were talking about enzymes and describing it, actually, what came to my mind was the closeness of the word enzyme to enthusiasm. And we work with knowledge a lot in the spiritual practice and what's it actually for. And it's actually meant to create enthusiasm, so that I constantly can, in a non-violent way, be overriding. So a constant diet of spiritual knowledge is really critical to feed. It gives me the energy or the power, the enthusiasm, which I think the first student Brahma Baba had. I mean, he was in advanced years physically, but seemed to be more energized than souls half his age. Where was that energy coming from? Someone would say God. Yes, absolutely. But also the way he could process the spiritual wisdom, make it so personal and therefore meaningful. And it gave him actually energy, inspired him. So I think that's really important.
How about Mama? So she was a second student. She certainly must have had enthusiasm. Yeah, we'll definitely show the picture, but she was often known to be quite quiet. So perhaps maybe our idea is enthusiasm. If you know much at all about Mama, if you could share, but there's a question connected to that in terms of enthusiasm.
I'm laughing because earlier today, so this is a picture of Mama in the center. She was garlanded, probably not at will. She wasn't the type who liked to be garlanded, but certainly was worthy of that kind of recognition. I'm laughing because earlier today, it was a really funny experience. So I'm training one-on-one with a client who has multiple injuries. So we really have to do very mindful work. And we can only use certain equipment. They have to, a lot of spinal. So the load has to be, so we use a special piece of equipment that allows them to work hard, but without as much load from gravity. And so usually it's the afternoon, super quiet. And then while we're starting to train, this other instructor comes in and starts to pull out the heavy duty boot camp, the big tire, the sled, the battle ropes, all the big heavy duty training equipment. And we're kind of like, and I said, it looks like something really scary is about. So then we move to the apparatus and we have to stay there because they can't use otherwise we would have moved. So we're doing this very quiet, just like Mama, quiet, introvert work. And these people, I think it was firefighting training, I'm not sure, but they start doing their training. It's absolutely the exact opposite of what we're doing. It looks like a lot's going on. It looks like they're doing a lot of hard work, a lot of crazy stuff, getting somewhere. But the vibration was so different. We were also training at a very high level, but it was a completely quiet, different. This was Mama, is very introverted, very attentive, doing the true inner work without really the focus on the show, to the point that even when we don't actually know, I think, fully how much Mama did because she was the last one to talk about it. Others might who witnessed, but who knows what she was doing. So just so deeply interested in the transformation, the quiet, just for its own sake. You know, it sounds selfish, and we often say this is a selfish path that leads to selflessness. But really, the soul found it so fulfilling. And I was really to realize the self, the full potential of the self. And I was really thinking about her yesterday, and it comes back over and over that the deepest inner work is to know who I am. And when we say that, we're really saying, do you know your full potential as a spiritual being, as a child of God? Do you know? And the definition we have for know is to accept. So it became, because she spent so much time on the deepest inner work, got that seed, everything became easy. was very easy for her to conduct herself a certain way because she knew she had accepted who she is, and she stayed in that place, which requires a lot of inner power to hold that awareness of the self. So I think she was quiet because she was busy doing that inner work.
Perhaps maybe you actually answer the second question. So if you have, you can tell me. But when you were talking about enthusiasm, before you were sharing about Mama, I was thinking about that, to be able to know ahead of time if that enthusiasm comes from the right place. Because I remember there was one, and I'm not saying it was bad, but it was definitely a different quality of dance, right? And I remember you had shown me two different master teachers of dance, and they had like young kids that they were teaching. I don't even know if I remember this, but they were just doing a little I don't even know what you call it, like just a little.
It was a workshop.
Yeah, but I don't.
Doing some freestyle.
Yeah, freestyle. Do they call it battle? I don't remember what they call it. But anyways, they had, I don't know if those were their top students. And one of them, there was so much enthusiasm, but it was a very different feeling. But the other one was very quiet, and her moves were very clean. I could completely feel the difference between the two. And again, I'm not saying that the one who was very boisterous or enthusiastic, but I guess I was thinking about in the study, to know ahead of time if my enthusiasm is coming from a right place, or is it sort of part of seeing the feedback of watching my changes, watching my responses versus reactions, to know if it's coming from the right place.
I think for many, introversion and enthusiasm don't really seem like they should be going together. So it seems very odd. So we often say inner enthusiasm, just to clarify what's going on, what I'm enthusiastic about. And it's again back to, I really can appreciate the interest once I figure out that the deeper the focus, the bigger the impact. And, I am remembering one particular trainer who started from a very heavy lifting background, but started to get into what we call body work, so more body weight work, more alignment focused. Eventually started to introduce meditation, eventually philanthropy. Like, it became progressively more and more introverted. They were still as strong, but I started to notice that their demeanor was very different from other heavy lifters. They're what we call their dharana, not showy at all, very gracious and very quiet. It's quiet power. So it's an inner enthusiasm. The energy of the soul is directed on something very deep inside that will eventually manifest externally, have an impact externally, but not focusing on that so much, just really excited to be able to fix things at the seed or the roots. That's the enthusiasm. So that's an underground endeavor, but very excited, having figured out that's where change really happens. So feeling the enthusiasm of, I finally have the solution.
It's interesting when you're talking about the introversion and the enthusiasm. I had a long time question, and I don't know if it's still a question or if it's experimenting, or if I've come to some realization or understanding on a practical level. But we use this phrase in the study called intoxication. Maybe the closest word would be enthusiasm. But when we're using the word intoxication, we know in a very physical way, the way that word is used. It's obviously to be able to have an experience of a high, so to speak. But in this study, the intoxication is spiritual intoxication. And often I think about it, and I do think of enthusiasm. But the reason why I'm asking in terms of this introversion enthusiasm, what is the link between intoxication, the spiritual enthusiasm, and silence, because some would think that those are two completely different things. Is that kind of intoxication, enthusiasm needed to have a very good quality of silence?
When we say spiritual intoxication, spirituality means non-physical, or in the physical realm, we'd use the word invisible. So science can only deal with the visible, can only detect the visible and get excited about visible things. But through silence, I can experience what is spiritual or non-physical. So now I can be excited or enthusiastic about non-physical or spiritual things. So I can't have spiritual intoxication without silence, because it's in silence. It's not empty silence. It's where I get to experience spirituality. So that the soul who has spiritual intoxication, someone is like, what are you excited about? We often have the joke that, if someone came up to you after a period of time, said, what's going on? What's been happening in your life? And you go, oh, wow, so much has changed. And they said, like what? Like what? Well, I have the same job. I live in the same place. Everything appears the same. But the stuff that is inside, the invisible stuff that's in the realm of silence, science cannot measure it, but silence can make it very clear, is what's changing. So one who has a good relationship with silence is able to experience all of these treasures of spirituality. That's what I get excited about.
So I know, again, we're running overtime, but we started late. Surprise. So yesterday I had a chance to catch a glimpse of this lovely session on sweet silence that was offered through Peace Village, and Sister Judy was I'm not sure what you call it, guest speaker for it. It's called Sweet Silence, the Seed of Transformation. And if souls wish to see that, we do have the recording. Just email the center, calgary@ca.brahmakumaris.org, and we can certainly send it to you. But whatever I caught of it, I was thinking quite a bit, reflecting on just my own practice. And I had realized a few days ago that a part of the laboriousness is thinking a lot. And, like saying, I'm a soul, whatever. You're actually not really experiencing it. And then a few days ago, I felt like something released inside, just to go into the experience. Why I'm sharing about this, I wanted to ask you about your experience, because you briefly touched on that, because you had an actual physical fitness class to facilitate right after this lovely sweet silence workshop. But you were saying it doesn't take long, and you were sharing that even me going up the stairs, I can go right into that experience. So could you take us into your inner world and what is going on? Is it like thoughts, or is it that you've realized enough again and again that I'm a soul, that you're actually going into the experience of it? Because that's what I realized, that at least for myself, was a labor. Well, that it was like, I don't tell myself I'm point in light, but you're trying, as if you think that talking to yourself in your mind is going to actually lead to that. But eventually the whole point is that you realize your soul and you can go into it. So I was thinking if you can share about that, and maybe if you had a physical fitness example that helps us to understand, because I guess it's the same thing. If you're doing ballet or something, you can tell yourself something again and again, but then you have to actually do it. But that's a very physical example. And I realize that maybe souls don't realize there's a lot of labor going on to just go into the experience of being a soul, and we don't realize it's there.
I think this is, for me right now, the thing of greatest interest, is to really check I use the word kinesthetic because I don't know what other word to use, but doing spirituality rather than just thinking it, or what we're doing now, listening to someone talk about it. Because it's such a deep training in this birth that in being so much in physical endeavors, whether it was dance or athletics, you might have a brief moment where something is explained to you. But that's not going to be the entire training session. It's a very small part of the training session. Eventually, the ballet teacher, the track, the trainer will say, okay, show me. And I have to be able to convert what they just told me into a feeling and a practical demonstration. It's very deep training that you get. And it doesn't always, you can see that. So even today I was taking a class, and for whatever reason, it was a Pilates class, which is very subtle, precision focused. And the trainer that day, the teacher today, for whatever reason, she realized herself, she says, wow, I'm really technical today. She was throwing at us nonstop technical cues of very subtle things. And I was just watching the self. I, the soul, would get the cue, hopefully understand what it means, and convert it into an actual feeling and practical demonstration. It couldn't just be, okay, I heard, maybe I don't know what it means, or I just sort of think about what they said. I actually had to feel it in the body. So to be able to, and that takes a while to shorten up, right? It goes through many steps. So it keeps changing in our spiritual life. At first, it is mostly head stuff, and eventually gets to the point where in a second, I can convert it into a stage or an experience. That's our whole spiritual life, is shortening that gap. So this idea, so we always say in a second, in a second. The idea is that I want to feel it. I'm going to convert, so we call it knowledge, raw material, into a stage, a state of being. That's my study. And what we call study, that it gets into what we say dharana, behavior. So as I'm leaving the session and walking up the stairs, there is a lot of internal, because people are saying hello to me and all sorts of things. You probably noticed that someone walked in towards the meditation, and I felt so much for that soul. So I wanted to reassure her. So I had to, I was talking to people because she felt really bad. So all that time, enormous, to me, the biggie, the essence of enormous detachment, to be able to feel spirituality in myself as I'm walking and moving around. Enormous detachment, which means a lot of neutrality. Now, people hear neutrality and they think it's dead, but it actually shows up because what I'm doing is I'm being very neutral. I'm not letting any waste in. That's what neutrality means. I'm not letting any expansion or waste in. So there's more space for truth. And that's what's going to come out. And what truth looks like when it comes out is very light, very joyous, very loving. So detachment means nothing wasteful is going in. So that means there's more, I feel myself more rather than a bunch of unrelated stuff coming in and influencing me. I get more space to feel myself. And then what comes out is the true nature of the soul. Yeah.
Yes, it did. So that's been profound for myself. And so I hope souls know that this is gold. This being able to recognize the difference between thinking and being really so much in my awareness. But we are so over time. It's been very powerful. And so I suppose we should have a wee reflection.
Very wee. The body is still, seated quietly, And there are no distractions, nothing else pulling my attention. I've done as much as I can, so I am free to come inside. This hunger to be fully with the self. Not the physical image, but the self. This body is like a container, a box, and I am the content, the substance, the jewel inside the container. I want to listen. Silence enables me to listen, so I can hear the true nature of the self. Extremely peaceful. To feel that quality of peace. It's cool. It's light. It can easily let go. It's simple in the moment. Free. The more seconds of this experience I can string together, the stronger that stage of authenticity will become. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Sister Judy, for sharing your experiences. And for those online for joining with us, a warm reminder to save the date, and the registration link is now available, and it is posted on the center's website, of the much loved and enjoyed public Diwali. And what is the name of the topic, the theme again?
I think it's the light of limitless love.
So that is on a Sunday, November 19th, just so happens to be a World Meditation Hour, I believe, 6:30 to 8:30, and it is taking place at Scarborough Hall. It is not on Eventbrite because we are transitioning to a different platform. So it is on the center's website, calgary.brahmakumaris.ca. If you wish to register for that. For those who are not able to join, we will be offering it through YouTube as well, live streamed. So please note that if you can't join, even on the day of, it will be archived and we'll be sending the link out. There are lots of other sessions on the website, so please feel to take a look on site and online. And also just want to remind souls that Inner Fitness on site, that which we used to have before the pandemic, is now being offered. It used to be called Practical Meditation, but I loved the Inner Fitness sessions because they were really about topics that seemed like it was all about fitness, but seeing the spiritual parallel. So we have reinstated that at 12:30 to 1:15 at the Academy. November, the topic is inner stability. So that's on the website as well. I believe that's on Eventbrite. So some of our sessions are still on Eventbrite. So thank you for joining with us. Om Shanti.